Greetings everyone, I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. As we've gone over multiple times on this show, and we're gonna bring up several times in the future, especially once we get to the later seasons, Ray has an interesting relationship with his father, Frank, as does Robert. But Ray is more the focus in this episode, even though the catalyst for it is something that both of them went through with Frank in the past. And that, of course, is Frank playing ping pong with them and him finally losing to one of them, only for now it to turn out to all being a swerve by Frank, bro. This is, of course, Season 3, Episode 13, Ping Pong. And if you saw my video essay about my 10 favorite episodes, this is one of the 10. One of the first episodes I saw. I know I've said that a couple times, but it's true. And it is one of the ones that really nailed the character of Frank for me. And I'm like, okay, I enjoy watching this character. And if I were to have to nail down an episode that sums up a character and their interaction and relationship with other characters, for Frank, this would be that episode. Like the ball from Season 1, this really heavily deals with his relationship with Ray. But we see the other side of it. That one, it makes it look like he's being tough, but he's being a little sweet. Whereas this one, we see that toughness does have a point, even if it's not obvious at the time or at all. Now, as I've already alluded to, the plot involves ping pong. When the kids were little, into their early teens, Frank would routinely play ping pong with them, usually after school, on weekends, routinely, and in his own Frank way, he'd be taunting them. 10 serving 3, you can't compete with me, for example. Until one day, Ray beat him with his Raymond spin ball. And apparently after that, neither of the boys ever had to play Frank again. Marie overhears them talking about it, and she lets slip that time Ray did not win. Frank let him win. And this crushes Ray a little bit because he's like, the one thing I had over my father, and it turns out it was a lie? My childhood was a lie? So the first thing he does is he storms up the stairs and demands Frank tell him the truth. Tell me what happened. And he's like, yeah, I let you win. They get into an argument, and Frank still holds his ground. Is like, I learned to play in Korea from Koreans. You think you could have beaten me? And the thing I love about this scene is how Peter Boyle instantly goes from mock comedy to being more straight, where he's like, you mean this face? Just the way he sells it just shows that Peter Boyle had perfect comedic timing. I mean, he was great as a dramatic actor, but as a comedy actor. So what does Ray propose? He proposes a rematch. And the rematch is set for the next day. Ray gets ready, the match commences, and it goes about how you would expect. Ray gets his butt kicked. And this scene is a perfect example of how to write a comedy scene, how to shoot a comedy scene, how to act a comedy scene, and how to pace it in editing. All of it, just a perfect showcase. I'm going to try and see if I can find the whole scene on YouTube and put the link in the bottom so you can all see what I mean. But it's just all perfect. From the moment Frank enters till he storms up the stairs, that whole scene, perfect. And of course, what makes that last part even better is that the way he goes up at the cadence of it, dun 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 dun, slam. It just sounds like it could be something you could recreate with instruments and dance to it. Probably the sound department. If that actually was a live capture on the set, I'd give them applause for that. Well, Frank does open up with Ray a little bit about why he did the games, and that was he wanted to show both Ray and Robert that life is gonna get at you and you gotta get ready for it. To borrow a line from Sylvester Stallone, life isn't all sunshine and rainbows. It's not about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. And that is essentially what Frank was trying to teach him. You have to be tough in life. And the reason for that is actually Korea. It's not there's just the fact he was in Korea, because as we've heard multiple times, and we'll hear a couple more times after this, Frank is proud of his service in Korea. It's that when he came back, he had nothing. No job, no skills. Well, he had Marie, but he kind of is like, when that's brought up. He had nothing, and he had to scrounge and basically start anew, since he wasn't continuing his military career. And I'm going to assume at the time that joining the police was not an option, whether because he didn't want to do it or he couldn't do it for some odd reason. I'm going to guess probably from something we're going to find out later in the season, probably couldn't because of his knee. Sometimes injuries like that will preclude you from being able to join. Eventually he did manage to find a job, but Ray calls it a career, but he says it was just a job. It wasn't something he enjoyed doing. It was something he had to do because he had to do it. He had to provide for his wife. He had to provide for the kids when they got there. He had to provide for himself. He had to deal with people, which I'm not really going to get into my career and all that, but I really understand that part, especially right now. So that's one aspect of this episode that has gotten better with age, which is why I'll say that I do stand by it being in the top 10. You got to be tough for it. Now, it's a little weird that he would pick Ping Pong out of everything to use to show his sons you gotta be tough. But I could see why. It's better than, beating the crap out of them, going, you gotta be tougher than that, Nancy, using a game. And it also explains his whole behavior during the games. Being aggressive during the plays, mocking, trash talking. Everything had a purpose. And then it also explains why, when he finally lost, because he does level with Ray and admit that Ray did legitimately beat him, why he decided to stop playing. Because once his sons had finally figured out how to beat him and did, it's like they have been taught everything I can show them. Now it's up for them to go. Now he might still make fun of them as adults, but he's probably going to respect them in a little bit. But with how he is as a person, he's not going to come out and outwardly admit it. Just like he doesn't really say he loves them a lot unless something seriously happens. And as we saw in the second episode of the whole series, is like not something you really say a lot from how they were raised in their parents' generation. Now, one thing I will say about the writing of this episode, and this is a great part, is that the person that wrote the teleplay, Aaron, sorry if I butcher this last name, Shuri, this was the first episode of the show he wrote. Now, I'm sure that he was probably brought into the writer's room before that at some time, whether he was around them for the first couple seasons, was brought in early on, and managed to get a grasp of how these characters are from watching past episodes, interaction with the actors, and talking with the other writers. But he nailed all the characters and their interactions with each other first time out the bat. I gotta give him a clap. Now, out of all the Barones, besides the kids, of course, Deborah's the one that's in it the least amount. She's only in 2 scenes, but don't really need her more in the plot. And of course, part of the reason for that is this is, like I said in the last episode review, Patricia Heaton was heavily pregnant here. And you could definitely tell, because they're really hiding it a bit more here. She's sitting down in her first scene, covered. She's wrapped all around in blankets in her second one. Which that led to a very funny moment in the blooper reel, where after Ray's line, "No sex before a game," he said that's what Dell Harris always says. Her quick little ad-lib was, "That's not what he told me," and then she opened it to the audience. That's a good laugh. Not something you could throw in the final episode, but it is still pretty good. Now, Aaron, he does write some other great episodes, like Cruising with Marie later in this season, which is the episode I was referencing earlier when it comes to Frank's knee. Ray Home Alone, another one of my favorite episodes this season. Another great one involving the boy's relationship with Frank, funny enough. Another one on the list from next season, the can opener, which that one really hits home if you're a married couple, considering the subject matter. And another great one from later on, Pet the Bunny. He's written a couple other ones, but those are the ones that jumped out at me. Now, one thing, this was running in my mind before I rewatched the episode for this video, but one line in particular, if it was not for the context of this episode involving Ping Pong, it makes me wonder if the censors would have nixed it. And that is, when Frank and Ray, you're getting a little eye to eye with each other after Ray has thrown down the gauntlet, He's like, okay, tough guy. And he's like, you got the balls? Now, obviously, Ping Pong. He's talking about, do you have it? Of course, there's the other things like, you got the cojones to beat me? You think you could take me? And that's what Ray thinks of. And then he realizes, oh. Now, the epilogue and the prologue. A lot of the times, I rarely bring them up. Or the prologue and the epilogue. A lot of the times recently, I haven't been bringing them up unless there's a moment in there that ties back in with something from the main episode. And that's because there's not really much to note. With Season 1, they had a lot of the sports stars. Season 2 and part of the season, there was a couple moments. But here, I gotta bring them up. Here, the prologue, it's one of the two scenes with Deborah, so there's that. But plus, it's one of my favorite little prologue moments, even though it really has nothing to do with the greater episode other than talking about fathers and sons. And that is, Ray's getting ready to go cover the PGA, talking about playing golf down there too, getting his shoes ready. And the twins throw his golf bag, complete with putters, down the stairs. He brings them down and he scolds them. Even now, I still get a chuckle out of this one. Don't you know golf is all Daddy has? Ray getting on him. And the epilogue, of course, is Ray and Robert deciding to play some ping pong with trash talk. And the first thing that Ray says triggers Robert so much he rage quits the game. And that, of course, is 0 serving 0. You experimented at camp. Which, as a kid, that is a joke that just went... I understood that it was something, at least from Robert's point of view, bad because he rage quitted, but I did not understand what he meant. Now, of course, as an adult, I get what he means. He's implying that Robert had a homosexual experience at camp and was just experimenting, and he's not. And even the implication, he's like, yeah, I'm out of here. Which that definitely, you could probably still do that joke nowadays, but that's definitely one that a little bit easier to get away with back in the 90s. Nowadays, as a quick joke like that, probably not, but it wouldn't bother me if it's made. I can't speak for other people, though, but it is a nice little in-joke. Especially since it's punctuated by Ray mimicking Frank's little dancing. And that is Ping Pong. Like I said, one of my top 10 favorite episodes. Nice that it delves a little bit more into the relationship between Frank and his sons and why Frank acts towards them the way that he does, at least to an extent. And of course, definitely comes with my high recommendation. If there's one episode from Season 3 you have to watch at the exclusion of all others, watch Ping Pong. Especially if you want to get a good idea of what the character of Frank Barone is like. And then into the next episode, we go from Ray's relationship with his father to his relationship with his mother. And this, of course, is liar, liar, plans for hire.